It's not as clean in here as it should be. I don't know if you're going to have any problem with, because this is dirty because it hasn't had anything. Oh, this is a neat little thing too. When I water birds, my ducks, and I know it has dirt on it because it hasn't been cleaned since last year, but I put my water on top of this. So you know how ducks slop, right? Yep. Water falls into the pan. So then I take this whole thing out of the brooder, all right, and dump the water.
That's for using your dry.
For my dry brooders.
Like this over here?
Right. These are the dry brooders over there. So you can take that, there's some angle iron on top of that just to hold it down.
Is that just plywood bottom on that?
Yeah, just a plywood bottom. But then again, like I said, what I would do is I would place this right there and put the water on top of that. So it catches. A friend of mine came up with that. The guy who made all my cages, these wire cages, he came up with this and started using it for the brooders as the way to keep so they don't wet all the bedding. Because if you put the water right on the bedding, you know what that's going to do. Now, if you brood in this type pretty much consistently, I only use the wet brooder. This is a standard, the Croesus wet brooder, but I only put my hard to get started birds in there. So all my woodies will start in there for a few days till I get them eaten, and then.
So these you like? Is this what you use for?
I use the shavings.
You never have any problems with impaction or anything like that?
Nope. But I get them eaten. I try to get them eaten, and if this is empty, no matter what I hatch, I'll start them in here for a couple days, get them eaten.
And you hang the bulbs.
I hang.
You just set them
set them on top with a standard, dome heat lamp towards the back, or raise it up depending on how hot it is. But I try to give them, a source of heat. In here, same thing. I'll put one in the back. So a heat lamp over.
Well, what we do with these things is we've actually got a grate for both sides.
Right.
And we'll use them for dry brooders.
Right.
And that's 99% of what we raise is, we start them on dry brooding. Wood ducks, of course.
But wood ducks, hoodies, if I had ruddies, I'd probably be worried about them, but you got to be careful with them too, with even a wet brooder, don't you?
Well,
I haven't read your article yet, so you can spank me.
You got to read that.
I will.
Because that's going to be the only way you're going to really do good with wood ducks. But this, with these things, with the wood ducks and mandarins are also, mandarins for some reason, as much as they are like wood ducks, they're
easier.
They're easier. But I will say that you will lose less mandarins if you start them off wet brooding too.
I generally don't lose mandarins.
Well, I mean,
I've been lucky on them, but wood duck in the beginning,
you'll have good years and bad years dry brooding wood ducks. But I think overall the mandarins have a little bit better. You get a better start if they're wet brooded. The alternate method would be to put a water dish down there and trickle water, because they'll still go in there and.
Because I would put fresh water in here and I would drain it every couple of days. Once it got dirty, I'd drain it out and put fresh water back in.
But this is the only way to really be successful with wood ducks is raising this way.
And hoodies and all them other ones, they gotta have water. It made all the difference in the world. And I should have another one. I probably will get another one at some point. And I really need to set it up where I could have a trickler and just let the water run through.
So you did know, I'm sure that you noticed this. That there's one side of these things that's rough.
Yep.
We also put like a mat on there to facilitate.
I've been thinking about using either like a real fine vinyl coated type wire, or maybe even a screen or something, like a stainless screen or something.
Over in Europe, they actually have metal grates for the bottoms of these, and I think what they do over time. I mean, I haven't had a lot of experience with them myself personally, but I think that they move and they rub and they wear on the fiberglass. That's the nice thing about these types of plastic bottoms, which he also sells different sizes and poles too. But what I've also seen people do So take some of this, take it and cut it to this size and then lay that down in there.
Lay that down in there
for the
too.
ramp.
Yeah. Well, this was a worthwhile investment. I know that.
And you got the stand.
Yeah, I
along
bought
with
the
it, too.
stand with it too, and I mean, I could have built that easy, but I just said, oh, what the hell, while I'm
Sometimes it's just easier. Just
right at the same time, just said I don't have to mess with it or anything else.
No,
I've known Ian for a long time.
Now
so-
this is probably cheaper than wood.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is.
So how long do you keep the stuff in the brooders for?
Usually in here, I keep them, like the wet brooders, a couple of weeks, I'd say. And then they'll switch over to the dry brooder.
So you go from wet brooder to dry brooder?
Yeah, yeah. And then outside. Then they
Well,
go
most
outside.
people, that's the opposite. They start with the dry brooder, go to
Yeah,
wet brooder.
yeah. No, that's the way I've always done it with those tough ones. And since I've done that, I've been way more successful. I raise 95% of my wood ducks now, and in the beginning it was probably 50%, and then 60%.
What are you starting your wood ducks on for feed?
I use for the baby ducklings Missouri waterfowl starter, and I buy like 1 or 2 bags of that a year. I only give it to them for a couple weeks, and then switch them over onto a Purina. Basically, it's flock raiser crumbles, which is basically their.
So you're not
waterfowl
starting
feed.
them on anything like mealworms or anything?
Well, I do have those when I have problem, like with the hoodies and stuff. I try to use mealworms with them.
Have you tried bloodworms?
No.
Have you tried any of them yet?
No.
Bloodworms and shrimp.
You buy the frozen bloodworms?
Yep. And then the little cubes, same
Right.
with the shrimp. It's like a little brine shrimp type thing.
From a fish store, basically.
From Pet Supply,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
yep. And it's a frozen cubes. They come in packages, and we buy a few packages.
What do you put it on
season.
a dish with some water and?
Yeah, you put it in a little water dish, and they'll start eating it pretty good. Because especially when those bloodworms start melting, they move around and it attracts their attention. We use them for ruddy ducks, mostly ruddy ducks.
I do maintain a couple colonies of mealworms, so I can raise them. They're relatively easy to raise.
Yeah, I got other things I gotta raise.
Well, that's one of the problems is every now and then I forget that I have them in the basement, and I go, it's time to put an apple or a potato or something in there to give them a little moisture, and then you go down there and you're like, I hope they're still alive, but I've caught them even if I've gone a month. They're still gone, and so I've been lucky.
Yeah, and another thing that works well too is we got kind of turned on to it this year. We did them a little bit here and there. Is the freeze-dried mealworms? To start some of the species, but then you also you got to be careful with stuff like that too. You got to kind of steer back onto your pellets because you don't want to displace your nutrients by overfeeding.
Yeah.
The other thing, so after how many weeks do you keep them on your starter feeds?
Once they get, I keep them on the starter or a crumble because even the Purina flock raiser is really intended for them to be on it up until they're almost feathered up. So I keep them on that crumble right on through. But the Missouri, like I said, it's just a couple of weeks. And the first 2 weeks, how much feed does a duck eat in 2 weeks? Nothing.
Much, yeah.
Like I said, 50 pounds of the Missouri starter will handle all my ducks.
We only go through maybe like 5 bags a year or something like that.
Yeah.
And we actually feed our pygmy geese. Our pygmy geese eat that as their maintenance diet.
Oh wow!
Well, it's mixed with some seeds and stuff as well. That's one of these things where we're mixing feeds. We don't really know, but we're just going based on some past successes of like Bronx Zoo. So they used to use like canary seeds. So getting back to our earlier conversation, we're kind of shooting in the air on what we should be feeding them.
Because there are certain species where we know a lot less about them, and there are some experiences through the zoos and stuff that we've heard, and that's why we need to follow those. It's like fruit doves. You can't feed fruit doves, a dove or a pigeon pellet. Right. You're going to kill them. So you got to get the right food that's being used for those when you're dealing with. But the bulk of the basic species are fine being treated pretty much the same way. But it's those real exotics, and a lot of times, the reason they're so expensive, I tell everybody, the reason they're so expensive, because they're not that easy to raise. And we all know that. So, but I try to keep them, like I said, once they start getting to the point where their wing feathers where I start seeing them coming in pretty good, then I generally will band them. I try to keep them in groups by their clutches. Then I band them, and I band every clutch with a different, and I know some people don't like the zip ties and stuff, but I use a different colored zip tie on the leg that designates the clutch. So I might use yellow, so I'll have a ring teal nest that'll have yellow bands on. I'll have a cinnamon teal nest that'll have, everybody gets yellow first, then I go orange, then I go red, then I go green, then I go blue, then I go purple, then I go black. So I have that many clutches from a species that I can
You're
have.
using some of those seamless bands too, right?
Yeah, and then when I move them from in here out, at the same time that I put that band underneath of a seamless plastic band that I get from the American Bantam Association, which I'm a member of. And they're like 43 cents a piece or something like that. And they come in a whole host of sizes, but I think the smallest ones I use are like 9 millimeter or something like that, and I use that on teal. And then there is like an 11 millimeter, I think that they use on woodies and mandarins, and then I have a 13 millimeter that I can use on like the widgeon and maybe those Bahama pintails, and some of maybe shovelers will use that too. But they have them all the way up. I mean, they have them up to like an inch in diameter. You couldn't use them on swans, but pretty much everything else. I didn't talk about incubation either, and basically all my incubation is done by the mother on the nest until they're about 3 weeks along. And what I do is when I go out and I check the boxes, and I try to leave them alone as much as I can, but I check them once a week. If I see down in the nest, I'll put a stick pin on the top of the nest box. Okay, it doesn't matter what color, just a one stick pin means that's the week I caught them the first time. The next week, they'll get a second stick pin. The next week, they get a third stick pin. And then the next week, I pick the eggs up and put them in the incubator. That way I don't miss them, and every now and then,
pretty good method.
Every now and then I miss one because I didn't catch them, right in the beginning. But that way I always know, when they're so that if they're 3 weeks, and what species do we have that are faster than 21 days? Not very many of them. So I always figure by then I bring them in so they got maybe a week to 2 weeks more, and then they're going to hatch. So I bring them in and then let them hatch in the incubator and then bring them out.
What kind of incubator you using?
I have I actually have two, I have an incubator and a hatcher, and to be honest with you, with ducks I would use the hatcher as my incubator too, but I have a GQF hatcher and a Dickey's incubator that I use pretty much for everything. And then after, like I said, they're in here, they get feathered. Once they get banded, then they go outside on my raised wire pens for a little while to get waterproof. Because I've had birds, if I take them from a dry brooder, band them, and put them on the ponds, I'll have drowned birds.
Right.
So I basically put them into the raised pens out back, and we can take a quick look at them. And then after they go through there, they have basically hog pans, 3-gallon hog pans that I fill with water, and let them just start preening and getting themselves all waterproof, and then from there, then they'll go out into a pen out.